Well, I think cities can benefit from new technologies and new tools, whether it be new technologies that allow transit to run more efficiently or things like that. I certainly think those can add value to the way cities are run, but they do not replace the need to do your city planning, your city building properly in the first place. And I think there are many cities trying to retroactively apply technology to solve problems that were caused by the pattern of the city itself, and that won't work. The best technology for running transit will not work in a city that is low density, separated, and sprawl. All you'll know is how you'll have great data and great technology to tell you how inefficient and impossible your transit system is. So my worry is that the discussion globally about smart cities and new tech seems to be instead of the discussion about how to build great cities. And I saw this in the recent summit in Paris. There was lots of discussion about technology, not enough discussion about the fundamentals of city building, which we actually have understood for years and very much know how to do. And so I'm a little worried that the technology discussions will distract us from the tough choices of fundamental city building that we need to make. I've been asked to speak on smart cities at conferences, and I remember one in particular where I was asked, will technology save the city? And on this side of me was one technology company, and on this side of me was another technology company. And they talked about their products, and they were trying to sell their products to international cities, many of which have very small budgets and are struggling to figure out what to do with those budgets. And I think I disappointed my friends on either side of me, because I said that the real technology, if you will, for city building is an understanding of the technology of compact, walkable, mixed-use communities using what I call the power of nearness, where everything is proximate. And technologies like transit, old technology and new technology, and innovations like wheeled luggage and how that can change cities, and bikes, which is a very old technology, but the advent of bike share and separated bike lanes and such becoming much more ubiquitous around the world. These may not be sexy, and they may not be sold by these big technology companies, so they're not being talked about enough, but they are the fundamentals. It's very old technology about city building, about bikes, about walking and luggage and how we move it, that really powerfully affect urban form and vice versa. And so I do worry a little bit that the technology companies are talking about the things that they are selling, not necessarily the things that cities need. I think there has been, over the last few decades, a relearning of civic design. It's not ubiquitous. Not every planner understands it, and there are still many city planners and architects and landscape architects who are actually part of the problem, still separating things, still planning for the car, not the people, etc. So there is a learning curve, but I also find it's a matter of what I call will and skill, because many of us know the right answers. Many of us actually know the right things to do in cities, and we've seen the best practices, and we've seen what works in cities and fails in others, and yet we tend to continually replicate the failures and not implement the successes. And when I ask my colleagues in urbanism why, they can give excuses many times. So it comes down to, do you have the will and skill to do the right thing when it's hard, and it's often hard? But do you have the will and skill to do it more so than do you have the knowledge of what to do? Because often they know what to do, but it's not being done. And it's an intriguing question, why not? Well, eco-density was an initiative about how density, about our compactness and our mixed use, was the bedrock for many of the solutions to problems that we face, whether it's affordability in Vancouver, a very expensive city, lowering our carbon footprint and reducing our ecological impact, addressing demographic shifts or urban health issues, etc. So it's a fundamental, and I think part of eco-density was making it not political, not the flavor of the month, but a fundamental. And we worked for 2 years and engaged the whole city and all of our politicians from every party about the very tough discussions about density, what we call the D word, the third rail of municipal politics. Most politicians never want to talk about density. It was on the front pages of every paper and magazine in Vancouver for 2 years. And we had that very tough discussion. And it got to a point where I think density is still controversial in Vancouver. It's still being debated and discussed, but we've gotten past the threshold of whether it's a good thing to do or not. It's become what I call a discussion about how to do density well. And that's the right discussion. And one thing I made sure of in eco-density is that it was not something supported by one political party and opposed by others. We have 3 political parties on council in Vancouver, and I said to my team, and I said to the mayor at the time, that anything but a unanimous decision of council I would consider a failure, because we needed it to be permanent. We needed it to survive the next election and the election after that. And indeed, the mayor who championed the term eco-density and gave it to me to define, he lost the next election. But by then, the other 2 parties who won had voted for eco-density too, even though they didn't want to, because it was the other guy's idea. But I made sure that it was unanimously supported by working with all parties, and it has become now a foregone conclusion. Eco-density is still a given. It's translating into new things every day, because that's what it was. It was a mindset shift about how density, design, and land use could address all of our societal challenges, whether they be carbon footprint or affordability or what have you. So I think that's made it very resilient. It's still controversial. Density will always be controversial, but we've broken through that threshold where it's being debated, do we do it or not? And now it's how you do it well, and how much density is good in one particular place, how to make sure you don't do too much density. And I wrote eco-density, but I'm still the first one to say that's too much density in this context, because you have to do density well, and it always has to be contextual. It always has to be sensitive to the circumstances of the place and the moment, or else you're just overbuilding. You're just cramming people in. Density done well is a bit of an art and a science. Well, first of all, I think it's great that cities are competing for the title of the greenest in the world. We heard at the Paris summit the statement that any mayor who tells you they're not competing with their fellow mayors is probably lying, because every mayor wants to be inspired by other cities, but they don't want to be outdone by other cities. But that's a very healthy thing, because if you're not competing, you're probably stagnating. So when our mayor challenges the world by saying we want to be the most green city in the world by 2020, I don't know if Vancouver will achieve that or not. But it's a great problem to have, to try to compete with every other city in the world. And if we come close and lose, I think we'll have still grown significantly as a city because of it. But of course, we want to win. But I'm intrigued by the efforts made by every other city, certainly including Copenhagen, which actually have more ambitious goals than we do. For example, Copenhagen wants to be carbon neutral as a city by 2025. We only have set a target to have all our new construction be carbon neutral by 2020. But all of that existing building stock still won't be carbon neutral. So we're already behind. But I think it's great to be in the competition, because we can observe that and think, we have to adjust our goal if we are really serious about becoming the greenest in the world. You asked about the economic side of things. It very much worries me that there is a discussion about economics being more important than environment and social, because that's wrong thinking right off the bat. There is no separation between economics and environmental. Someone asked how much would Copenhagen's carbon footprint goal or carbon neutrality goal cost? And I responded, how much would it cost if the city didn't achieve that? Because the environmental and thus economic consequences of inaction are staggering, and nobody does that math, or not enough people have done that math. So when you actually think about how everything is interconnected, which is the proper way to think about cities and society and governance, the cost of not taking action on the environment is staggering. And frankly, we don't have a big enough economy in the world to pay for it if we don't take action. So that's got to be the math of eco-density, the math of sustainable cities, etc. The cost and consequences of not taking action quantified. It's a frightening number. I think looking at the world, I was very excited about the Grand Paris projet, where the national government had a competition to think about the future of the metropolitan region for Paris. Very exciting. And I'm not sure if I liked any of the ideas particularly, but I loved that kind of grand visioning for the future of a metropolitan area. And thinking about the city as, the region as a city, opposed to thinking about a city within a region. Very, very progressive thing for city building. I think Copenhagen, wanting to be both a city of cyclists, getting to 50% mode share of bikes, and the innovations on district energy and wanting to become carbon neutral by 2025. Very, very exciting and inspirational. The truth is, the beauty of cities across the world is every city is doing something inspirational, every single one. And particularly the third world countries and the lower income countries, places like Bogota and Curitiba and such, teaching us, because they don't have a lot of money, how to do incredibly innovative things without a lot of budget, a lot of money. And that's inspiring. That's really, really inspiring. The creativity we're seeing in cities is just so impressive globally. I think Vancouver is a model, but the truth is Vancouver can learn from every other city in the world, and every other city can learn from Vancouver. And that's the beauty of this global dialogue we have now, and I'm very, very excited to be participating in that.